Hey everyone, and welcome back.
Yeah.
We're doing a deep dive today and looking at the role of the church in tackling substance abuse in South Africa.
Okay.
We've got some blog posts for this one, and they actually go way beyond, just sort of what churches are doing now and kind of paint this picture of what could be. And they're making some really interesting comparisons to the history of social activism in the church.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how the church in South Africa has really stepped up during some pretty challenging times.
Yeah.
We're talking, poverty, apartheid, even the HIV/AIDS epidemic.
Yeah, and it wasn't just about, handing out food parcels or protesting injustice.
Right.
Think about the peak of the HIV/AIDS crisis.
Right.
The church was one of the few institutions willing to even address that.
Yeah.
The huge stigma surrounding the disease. Providing practical support was obviously crucial, but, changing hearts and minds.
Right.
That's where they really made a difference.
Absolutely. And that's the historical context we need to keep in mind as we explore the church's potential role in addressing substance abuse today.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many lessons to be learned from their past successes and challenges.
Definitely one of the biggest takeaways from these blog posts is the emphasis on compassionate engagement.
Yeah.
It's understanding before judgment, meeting people where they are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just like with HIV/AIDS, empathy needs to be front and center. Imagine a church leader saying, those individuals experiencing addiction.
Yeah.
It's subtle, but that shift in language, moving away from harsh labels, can be incredibly powerful.
It's like they're saying, we see you as a person first, not just your struggles.
Right.
And that change in language, it needs to be everywhere, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Sermons, counseling sessions, even casual conversations in the church hallways.
Absolutely. It's about creating a culture of empathy and understanding. A culture where someone struggling with addiction feels safe enough to come forward and ask for help.
And what really blew me away was reading about churches already putting this into action.
Yeah.
St. Paul's Community Center in Johannesburg, for example.
Yeah.
They had this incredibly moving series called Healing Conversations.
Okay.
People actually shared their personal stories of addiction and recovery during church services.
Can you imagine the impact of that? To hear a fellow congregant bravely sharing their journey, their struggles, their triumphs, it normalizes the conversation around addiction and shows others that recovery is possible. It breaks down those walls of shame and isolation that can be so crippling.
And it wasn't just St. Paul's.
Right.
Grace United Methodist Church ran workshops tackling the mental health aspects of addiction.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the Hope Fellowship Network focused on advocacy, pushing for better access to treatment resources.
What I find so inspiring is this diversity of approaches. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, and each church can find its own way to contribute to the fight against substance abuse.
But here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a little controversial. The blog posts argue that the church needs to do some serious soul-searching, much like it did with issues like LGBTQ rights. They're talking about reevaluating long-held beliefs and practices.
It's a challenging but essential conversation. The world is constantly changing, and the church needs to adapt to remain relevant and effective. Think back to how views on divorce or interracial marriage have evolved within the church over time. This is about that same kind of evolution.
The authors specifically highlight the need for education.
Right.
They argue that many church leaders view addiction through a lens of morality as a personal failing.
And that's where the disconnect lies. Without a solid understanding of addiction as an illness, not a moral failing, it becomes nearly impossible to offer truly compassionate and effective support. It's like trying to treat a broken leg with a prayer alone. You need the medical expertise as well.
They also suggest creating support groups within churches, creating those safe spaces where people can connect, share their experiences, and find strength in a community that understands their struggles.
It's that concept of shared experience, of not feeling alone, that can be so powerful in recovery. It's like the church is uniquely positioned to offer that kind of support. It already has the infrastructure, the sense of community.
But it goes beyond just internal support, right?
Right.
The blog posts really hammer home the church's potential to advocate for those affected by substance abuse. They're talking about leveraging their position of trust and influence to push for systemic change.
Exactly. The church has a long and storied history of speaking truth to power. Remember when they openly challenged the apartheid government? That same courage is needed now to advocate for policies that address the root causes of substance abuse.
So give me an example. What would that kind of advocacy actually look like in this context?
Well, think about the lack of affordable treatment centers in rural areas.
Yeah.
The church could be a powerful voice advocating for increased government funding.
Right.
and resources allocated specifically to those underserved communities. They could even partner with local organizations to establish new treatment facilities or support existing ones.
So it's about more than just warm words and good intentions.
Right.
It's about taking concrete action
Exactly.
to make a tangible difference in people's lives.
And let's not forget the power of the pulpit.
Yeah.
Sermons can be used to challenge the stigma surrounding addiction,
Right.
to educate congregations about the realities of substance abuse,
Okay.
and to encourage compassion and support for those struggling.
Wow, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
But it makes perfect sense.
Right.
The church already has this built-in platform for reaching a wide audience that could be a driving force in shifting public perception and creating a more supportive environment for recovery.
And don't underestimate the impact of personal testimonies.
Yeah.
Hearing a fellow congregant share their story of addiction and recovery
Right.
can be incredibly powerful.
Absolutely.
It makes the issue real, relatable, and removes that sense of isolation.
You know, you're right. There's something about that shared experience, that sense of community that can be so transformative.
Absolutely. And that's where the church's existing infrastructure, that sense of belonging and shared faith, can be so valuable.
Yeah.
They can provide a safe and supportive environment for people to connect with others who understand their struggles.
So we've talked about the need for compassionate engagement,
Right.
education for church leaders, and advocacy for systemic change.
Yeah.
But what about the practical aspects of support?
Okay.
What kind of support services could churches realistically provide?
Well, one obvious area is counseling.
Yeah.
Many churches already have pastoral care programs,
Right?
but these often lack the specialized training to effectively address substance abuse issues.
So it's about equipping pastors and counselors with the tools and knowledge they need to provide truly effective support.
Exactly. Training in addiction counseling, motivational interviewing techniques. Even just basic knowledge about the different types of treatment options available could make a world of difference.
Beyond counseling, I imagine churches could also play a role in connecting people with other resources in the community.
Absolutely.
Like support groups, rehabilitation centers, or even job training programs.
Absolutely. They could act as a central hub, sort of clearinghouse for information and resources.
Yeah.
Imagine a church having a dedicated webpage or a pamphlet listing all the available support services in the area.
Yeah.
It could be a lifeline for someone who doesn't know where else to turn.
You know, this all sounds amazing in theory.
Right.
But I have to wonder, what are some of the challenges the church might face in taking on this role? I mean, let's be realistic. There are bound to be obstacles.
You're right. It's not going to be easy. One of the biggest hurdles will likely be overcoming stigma and judgment within the church itself.
It's that age-old tension between grace and judgment, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There can be a tendency within some religious communities to view addiction as a moral failing rather than a complex medical condition.
So how do we bridge that gap?
Right.
How do we create a more understanding and compassionate environment within the church?
Well, I think education is a crucial first step.
Yeah.
Equipping church leaders and congregations with the knowledge and resources.
Yeah.
They need to understand addiction and approach it with empathy.
Yeah.
It's about challenging harmful stereotypes
Right.
and promoting a more nuanced understanding of this complex issue.
The blog posts also talk about the importance of training clergy members specifically.
Right.
What kind of training would be most effective in preparing them to minister to those struggling with substance abuse?
I think it needs to be a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
It should cover the science of addiction,
Yeah.
the different types of treatment options available, and effective communication strategies.
Okay.
But it also needs to address the spiritual and emotional aspects of addiction and recovery.
So it's about equipping them not just with knowledge, but also with the skills and sensitivity to truly accompany those on their journey to recovery.
Precisely. It's about empowering them to create a safe and supportive environment within their churches.
Yeah.
Where people feel comfortable coming forward and seeking help without fear of judgment.
You know, another challenge that comes to mind is resources.
Yeah.
Addiction treatment can be expensive.
Right.
And many churches, especially smaller ones, simply don't have the financial capacity to provide extensive support.
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
But resourcefulness doesn't always have to be about money. It can also be about partnerships and collaboration.
Okay, I like where you're going with this. Explain what you mean.
For example, Churches can partner with local organizations
Yeah.
that specialize in addiction treatment and recovery. They can refer people to these organizations, offer meeting space for support groups, or even collaborate on outreach and prevention programs.
So it's about leveraging existing resources within the community and creating a network of support that extends beyond the walls of the church.
Exactly. By working together, churches and community organizations can have a much greater impact than they could on their own.
You know, we've talked a lot about the church's role in supporting individuals and advocating for policy change.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious to get your thoughts on the importance of prevention.
Prevention is absolutely essential.
Yeah.
It's about addressing the root causes of addiction
Okay.
and creating a society where young people are less likely to turn to drugs or alcohol in the first place.
So where does the church fit into that equation?
Well, think about the influence the church has, especially on young people. They can develop programs that focus on building self-esteem,
Right.
teaching coping skills,
Yeah.
and promoting healthy decision-making.
It's about empowering young people to make positive choices and resist negative influences.
Exactly. And the church can also use its platform to advocate for policies that promote healthy lifestyles and create environments that support well-being. Things like stricter regulations on alcohol advertising,
Okay.
increased funding for after-school programs, creating more recreational spaces for youth.
So it's about creating a culture where substance use is less likely to take root in the first place.
You know, another aspect of prevention that I think is particularly important is early intervention.
Okay.
It's about recognizing the warning signs of substance abuse
Right.
and intervening before the problem becomes more serious.
Give me an example of what that might look like in a church setting.
Well, for instance, church leaders can be trained to identify signs of substance abuse in their congregations. They can then reach out to individuals or families who might be struggling
Right.
and offer support or connect them with resources.
So it's about being proactive and creating a safety net within the church community.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And early intervention can be incredibly effective in preventing addiction from taking hold
Yeah.
and helping people get the help they need before it's too late.
You know, we've covered a lot of ground in this conversation, and it's clear that the church has a tremendous opportunity, and I'd even say a responsibility to step up and make a difference in the fight against substance abuse in South Africa.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the key takeaway here is that it's not about any one single action or program.
Right.
It's about a holistic approach,
Okay.
a commitment to compassionate engagement, education, advocacy, prevention, and support.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that addiction is a complex issue
Right.
that affects individuals, families, and entire communities.
It's about meeting people where they are offering a helping hand without judgment and working together to create a society where recovery is possible and accessible to all.
It's about the church stepping up and saying, we're here for you. We care about you. And we're going to do everything we can to support you on your journey to recovery.
You know, what strikes me is that it's not just about the church as an institution, right?
Right.
It's about each of us as individuals within the church stepping up and getting involved.
Absolutely. It's about creating that culture of compassion and support within our own congregations, where people feel safe enough to share their struggles and ask for help without fear of judgment. It could be as simple as checking in on a neighbor who seems to be struggling, offering a listening ear, letting them know they're not alone. Small acts of kindness can have a ripple effect.
I love that. It's that idea of recognizing our shared humanity, remembering that we're all in this together. We all have our own battles, our own vulnerabilities.
Exactly. And I think that's where the true power of the church lies, in its ability to bring people together to create a sense of community and belonging and to offer hope and healing to those who are hurting.
So let's bring it back to our listener. If someone's tuning in and thinking, I want to do something, I want to help, but where do I even start? What advice would you give them?
That's a great question. I think the first step is to educate yourself about addiction. Take some time to learn about the signs and symptoms, the different treatment options, and the resources that are available in your community.
So knowledge is power. Arm yourself with the facts.
Exactly. And once you have a better understanding of the issue, think about your own passions and skills. How can you use your unique gifts to make a difference?
Okay, I like that. So if someone is a natural organizer, maybe they could help put together a fundraiser for a local addiction treatment center. Or if they're great with kids, maybe they could volunteer for a youth mentorship program.
Exactly. It's about finding your niche, finding that place where your passions and talents can intersect with this critical need.
And even if someone doesn't have a lot of time or resources to give, Let's not forget the power of simply being a supportive presence in someone's life.
That's so important. Just listening without judgment, offering words of encouragement, letting someone know that they're not alone. These seemingly small gestures can have a profound impact.
So to wrap things up, it seems like the church has this incredible opportunity building on its rich history of social engagement to truly make a difference in the fight against substance abuse in South Africa. It's about educating ourselves, advocating for change, and most importantly, supporting one another. It's about creating a culture where recovery is possible and accessible to all.
And ultimately, it's about putting our faith into action. It's about living out those values of love, compassion, and service that are at the very heart of what we believe. It's about answering the call to be a beacon of hope in a world that desperately needs it.
So well said. And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought. If the church's response to substance abuse is truly a reflection of its core values, what will your church's response be? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.